Hi, everyone. Welcome to this interview by Core Recruitment. Thank you very, very much for joining us. Core Recruitment, if you're not aware, is an international recruitment company. We specialize in mid to senior level hires for exec and non-exec roles. Now, we are running this interview series because we want to inject some positivity, some fresh thinking, and some innovation into the sectors that we work across. And all of the interviews and sessions that we're recording, whether on video or articles, are all on our website, which is www.corerecruitment.com. So please go and have a bit of a click through. And if you would like to get involved, if you've got an interesting story to share, or if you could recommend another business leader who you think would also like to share their story, then absolutely please get in touch. Now, these are designed to be kind of half an hour injections into your day. So if you're running around the park, or if you're relaxing, or if you're watching, then please kind of like sit back and relax, make yourself a cup of tea, and join me to speak to Gavin Smith, who is the leader at one of my favorite restaurant concepts, Pizza Pilgrims. I have already apologized in advance for fanboying all over this interview. But how are you, Gavin?
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, it's a good way to start. I'm very well, thank you. Yeah, Happy New Year.
Excellent. So just in case somebody lives down a dark hole and hasn't had a pizza on delivery or made one of your pizzas at home or been into one of your kind of like, fabulous establishments, can you tell us a little bit about the business and what you operate currently?
Yes, hello, everybody. We are now 29 pizzerias, as we call them. We have 21 of those in London, the rest outside of London. So UK-based, all fully company-owned. We are founder-led. So Thom and James started the business 11 years ago in Dean Street. Still very much part of the business. Obviously, the team has grown around them. And now I head up the business with a great number of people. So we've got about 650 people now. We, over the last couple of years, have been going through the next investment event, if you will, and recently transacted there and now working as part of the McQuinn portfolio, actually working closest with a business in Germany called L'Osteria, sort of help grow the business to the next stage, which I'm sure we'll get to. But yeah, still very much, we've grown the business organically. We are a purpose-led business with an obsession on guest experience and food quality. And we try to have fun. Hospitality should be fun. So there's a lot in there. We've got to be safe and clean and make money and do what we say we'll do. But we're a pizzeria business, and our purpose is making people happier one pizza at a time. And we try to bring everything back to that. When the day gets too serious, let's just remember what we're doing.
Absolutely. Now, there's a lot in the press at the moment about restaurant businesses and hospitality businesses who have been struggling for the past 12 to 24 months. Why do you think this is?
Yeah, I think look, it's been written ad nauseum about the macro environmental factors, if you will, and I think they're real. I think the industry is going through a decade of real change that would previously have happened maybe over 20 years, catalyzed by COVID and then all of the cost pressures that have come after it. But the high street's busy. The high street's got as much competition as it's ever had. So you've got that factor. You've got the factor that we're more expensive to operate now. People, both team and guests, have got changing behaviors which are moving as quick as they ever have. We think about AI and people working 3 jobs and flexible working. So actually, whilst it's challenging, and it without question is, and we operate a pizza business which sells 14 pizzas and a lot of things around it, but we're a very focused business. We're able to make everything in the pizza every day, and we maintain a great economic engine for that business. But I do appreciate there are parts of our industry, like late night or a more involved sort of top end Michelin businesses, that these guys are struggling, and they're struggling because their costs are a lot more difficult to manage. But I think we've got to see it as an opportunity, Chris. We can't affect what we can't affect, and whilst I'm a real believer that we need to work more closely together as an industry, we did it really well in COVID. We weren't talking about nightclubs and cafes and restaurants and bars and pubs. We were talking about hospitality, and we were clapping nurses on a Thursday night, and we were saying, don't close our local pub. And I think to some extent since COVID, for a myriad of reasons, that we've become a little bit more, if you will, selfish in our own sectors. And I think that's not to misrepresent any of the great lobby and support we have from the likes of UK. I just think they do a great job. But we're going to have to figure out how we influence better as an industry. And that's a collective responsibility we've all got. And it's very difficult. I mean, there's a lot of frustrated business leaders out there. I get it. I really do. But my take on life, Chris, is, you focus on the things you can impact. We've got to keep influencing and affecting those things where we can. But to answer your question directly, look, the costs of running a business in hospitality have exponentially grown faster than maybe anybody could have even thought. I think consumer behaviour's changed. I think the role of technology is coming at us faster than we can react in some cases. But at the same time, people leave a house to come to a restaurant or pizzeria because they're looking for something they can't do at home. And we can give them great hospitality experiences. We can give them a great value, wonderful pizza, and we can, put a smile on their face. And it sounds really simple, and I know it isn't. But if every one of our team members can make somebody who comes in and spends money on a pizza feel better when they left than when they arrived, then we've done a great job. And we believe the pizza we sell, the locations we operate, the team we've got, that can also make good money, and we can grow a business and a brand and a team and have some fun doing it. But there's no doubt, I don't think all of it is with not within our control. There's definitely those macro factors which have been tough. But also, brands can get lazy. People can get lazy. You can, adapting, innovating, and trying to shape what the future looks like is our job. And, if I think about the best brands out there that I admire, they're the ones who are doing things quite simply, but really damn well and innovating. If you think about Flatiron when it started, if you think about, Thom and James, Brother Marcus, Big Mama Group, these are admired businesses that are succeeding commercially as well as they are with their team and their talent. So there's a kernel there of something, and I think it's around having a product which is delivered exceptionally well at great value, whatever that looks like, at whatever price that is. But there's probably, it's easy for me to say, right? But there's probably stable, talented leadership in those businesses, well invested, taking long-term decisions. And that's, there'll be great business leaders out there without the right support from their board, maybe, or from their investors, where they're having to make short-term decisions. That makes it a lot more difficult too. We're very fortunate, really, that we've got great investors, and we've had great investors, and we've been able to make 10-year decisions. And I think if you can do that with the right product, you've got a fighting chance in a market that's tough. I read something this week, actually, and I was talking to the guys in Germany about it. There was a report on the number of occasions serviced in hospitality across the big 10 European economies. By a distance, the UK sees the fewest or the biggest drop. So since 2019, there are 21% less occasions in casual dining today. 21%. If you compare that to countries like Germany, 8%, I think Italy's 10%. That's your profit gone. So why is that? I think some people will stay at home and eat M&S for £10. Some people will go and have a QSR concept. Some people will not go out because they haven't got the money because their mortgage has got £500. So the occasions have challenged businesses as well. And I think what we've got to do is hold our nerve a little bit, Chris. If you've got a business that you're proud of that's succeeded for a period of time, don't panic. But you might need to adapt quite quickly in terms of what you spend or how you grow or how quickly you grow or the kind of people you need in your team. I think all of those things are relevant, and they will change every year. They have done in my career. It's a long answer.
It's a really good answer, though. It's a really good answer. Now, in terms of format, you guys have done send pizzas home, you've done bars, you've done delivery.
Yeah.
I mean, there was arcade machines down in Canary Wharf that I seem to remember, which I absolutely loved. What was the best formula for you, and what can we expect from you in terms of formats for the future?
Yeah, I mean, we can't sit still. I mean, this comes really. I mean, I'm guilty of it, but Thom and James certainly love love creating ideas. James has always been the person who's like, you can read data to tell you what consumers want. Sell this product, it sells well over there, but actually it won't tell you what they don't know. And we've always tried to be those people who can innovate and create demand for things and products and pizzas and experiences, whether that is the first people putting double pepperoni and honey on a pizza, or creating, having comedy events in Canary Wharf, or Pizza in the Post, slice concept. These were all things that were geared around, at the time we developed them, how do we create and maintain interest in the brand? But fundamentally at its core, the Pizza Pilgrims is the economic engine, the drive of the business. That is the best pizza we can sell, with the best hospitality experience, like we talked about. Everything else around it is peripheral. Pizza in the Post doesn't really make us a great deal of money anymore. We're in Ocado. These are really brand plays. if I think about our events business, it's really successful. Double-digit growth on last year in terms of masterclass events and corporate events, and more recently our catering that we do through our website. That there's a number of these things which will complement your brand and complement your P&L, and I think that's important. I think I would never lose sight of that, because it keeps your team interested. It gives us something. We might strike gold with one of them and it becomes a real driver in the future, but we've got to make sure that we're spending the right amount of time and energy on the core business, which is Pizza Pilgrims, that team, that menu, those properties, and how we find those properties. So we will do more. I mean, we definitely, in every pizzeria we design now, we try to show a unique difference. We don't want to sort of cookie cut our design or our pizzerias in any way, shape, or form. And you'll see that if you go into Cambridge versus Edinburgh versus Cardiff, they're completely different. Brighton's got a 5-side football pitch underground, and when we opened Cambridge, we had a bocce ball court that can turn into a private dining area. So that's really about just generating a bit of interest. I remember years ago, Byron did it. I remember going into a Byron, I think in Glasgow, and I think there was a little cinema upstairs. It was absolutely, it's amazing. And you were going for a burger, but what you were seeing was people using the space a bit creatively, and it should be fun. It doesn't mean, by the way, that if you think about the great brands out there that are formulaic, that's fine, But I think in quite a saturated casual dining market, and certainly in pizza, which will become more saturated, and Neapolitan is, we've got to stand out. We've got to make people at home say, I want to go there because of this reason, and that's a little bit different. They expect good value. They expect a fantastic pizza and great hospitality. That's not, that's no longer something that we can aspire to. That's an absolute given. And we obsess about those things every day. But if we can give these unique reasons to visit, these fun elements, maybe it's just the reason that someone looked at us on Instagram. Maybe it's the reason someone came to work for us. Maybe it's the reason that you came twice this month. Ultimately, it drives fun, it drives innovation, and we're a really curious team, Chris. We care enormously, and we're pretty good at converting sales into profit and keeping the businesses safe. Every single restaurant is a 5-star at HO. We do the basics really well, but actually, I think what gets us out of bed in the morning is that curiosity and that innovation and that drive to do something differently and better and more energetically as we grow the business, really. And that's super important to us, both here and when we grow on the continent, which is part of our plan in the medium and long term. We don't just want to go, oh, that's over there. We want to create real interest for new customers. Maybe we go into a country in the future where we're first to market. We're not in London. We weren't. Frank and Manca were the trailblazers in our space, really. And we've tried to emulate that and protect what at our core is a great. I think that, we want to be around in a long time, and that's sometimes you'll take short-term decisions that are difficult. But I really, Thom said something quite poignant last year. One of our founders, he said, I want my kids when they're 18 to walk past the Pizza Pilgrims and want to go in. Isn't that lovely? It's not about we want to deliver this much sales or profit this year. We have to do that. That's the fuel for the fire. But actually, we're trying to build a business here with purpose. And I think, and I care enormously about hospitality. Everyone in my friend group, my loved ones, I've met in hospitality. I think hospitality is a force for good. And we underplay that quite a lot, and it drives me mad. And we should take that on the front foot. I've answered 5 questions there, sorry, Chris.
No, you're really good. I mean, it's really good. It's really innovative. In terms of, like, you mentioned growth there, and and franchising seems to be on everybody's agenda at the moment. It's kind of being the holy grail of kind of what they should be doing. Do you guys think you'll ever go down that line when you are doing this kind of like international expansion, or what do you see your other routes to getting there?
Yeah, I mean, maybe we right now we're obviously wholly company owned, and we don't see that changing in the UK. We don't need to grow at a pace, or that franchising would enable, or indeed we're not short of capital to grow at the pace we want, which is what ultimately franchising will do, right? So the experience of our partners, McQuinn and L'Osteria is one of company owned, sort of 50%, and then joint venture and franchise. That's definitely a model that's worked for them. And they've got the best. I met them. They've got the best franchise and JV partners in Europe. And, they've been partners with them in multiple guises over 20, 30 years. So actually going into a market you don't understand and having the tacit knowledge of great operators who understand the property and the people, there's a real value to that. But ultimately, we know we want to own the brand. We want to make sure that we're reflecting on new markets, new customers, new towns and cities. This is Pizza Pilgrims. So our ambition will always be to do that first, a company-owned site wherever we go. Could you grow it then after that with partners? Of course you could. And that could change. I'm not saying we wouldn't go into a market in Europe with a JV or franchise partner first. There's a number of things that would guide that decision. But your question was, would we? Yes. Are we thinking about it? Absolutely. We've got a pretty clear plan about where we want to be over the next 5 years. And we want to be part of a very successful 500-strong Italian-focused portfolio of businesses within McQuinn. And that really means us protecting what we bring to the party today, which is, to my mind, one of the very best Neapolitan pizza businesses. And we've got to grow that carefully. We've got to grow that thoughtfully. And we've got to continue to have an economic engine that investors are interested in. And we do that well today. So I think we can continue to do that. And I would say to a franchise or a joint venture partner, we're a really attractive business because, broadly half of our sales is labor and cost of goods. And that, if you're at that 50%, that is a pretty much a holy grail. A number of the investors I've come across over the years, if you can get to 50% labor cost of goods, you've got serious economic engine. It's certainly our price point, which is, I think, still very good value. But it's quite exciting. I have to say, I was nervous, cynical, excited in equal measure when I went into this new relationship. But having met their partners in Germany in November, Chris, they're operators. They really, really care about every single team member, every single guest that comes in there, and they know their area better than anyone. And I love that. That's what we get out of bed for.
Now, your people culture is something which is widely spoken about in the sector, and in terms of like longevity of individuals, all of that kind of side of things. What do you do to promote this kind of internally? What kind of activities do you think have the most impact?
Yeah, good question. I don't think there's a silver bullet with this. I think, the whole human resource function. Just think about that human resource. It's not exciting, is it?
Human capital is the one that really gets
human
me.
Capital, yeah. Like I get it. I mean, I don't want to be disrespectful to others, but like we have a people team, and it's our team. We make decisions, and I say we've got a very clear purpose. There's 4 pillars underpinning the delivery of that purpose, and surrounded by values and a business plan. But one of the pillars is our team, and we think about that in equal measure to the other 3. Impact, making money, team, and guests. They're your pillars. So I think to support that, we've got we built an academy 6 years ago, and I've passionately believed in that. Talking to Mark and Tommy about it, Oaxaca, years ago, and in M&B. We didn't do that, and I wasn't in a position of influence that could make that happen. But the academy was kind of, for me, the nucleus of, we're going to educate our way through every problem. You can train people to put a knife there and a fork there. You can train people to do what you want them to do, and that's important. It really is. But actually, we've got to tell them why. Why do we do the things we do, and why is that different? If it's different, why is it better? And the academy seeks to do that, right? So I think it's super important that you can do that with anything, actually. And I'll give you an example. We probably, like every restaurant business, had these inconsistencies with our food margin and cost of goods delivery, and it just drives me insane. It's like, this is very simple. You count it, you don't waste it, but it's not very simple because human beings are involved. We use the academy, and one of our team members who's been with us 11 years, a guy called Tom Mullen. Tom created a food stock wizards workshop. Sounds ridiculous. It's a whole day. Anybody in a salaried position in the business, or is going to be in the next 6 months, does this time in the academy with Tom, and we teach you about what stock is, how you count it, because you and I are a bit older, Chris. We would, I used to count stock with pen and paper, and you understood the mechanics. The young managers don't get that. We have to teach them. We have to educate them as to why it's important. And that has basically eradicated the inconsistencies in our food stock delivery. We have a food stock gap now that is probably the envy of the industry, but whether it's labor or cost of goods or how you recruit people, how you drive an initiative into the business that it lands everywhere, I think you do it through education, not training. And I think you do it in a way that's probably takes longer, but has a longer term impact when you do it. I think aside from that, you have to pay people fairly. You have to reward them fairly. You have to have a leadership style that says, we care about you. We're not just going to tell you what to do. I think, when you talk about organizational culture, I've had a coach for many years and he talks about, so what is culture to you? And he said, it's the smell of the place. The smell of the place. And that's interesting. And he's right. You can go into a business, a team, a leadership team, you can know very quickly what their style is. And there's no right or wrong. It's just different. Our style is one of coaching, supporting, training, but we've got very exacting standards around the basics. They're the tickets to play for me. And the culture and the way we develop our talent is an output of those things. We don't suffer fools very much at all. And that's okay. But what we're trying to do is make sure that everybody who works with us has a career that is fruitful. We talk about promotion rates. How quickly can we promote somebody from this role to the next one? Is that path clearly understood by everybody in the business? Do they have the tools, the leadership around them in order to go from step one to step two to step whatever? We've got wonderful success stories with that. And I guess as a business that's grown quite organically over a decade, somebody might listen to me and go, well, yeah, that's easy when you're, privately owned and you're opening 4 or 5 a year. I get that, but I don't think the principles change. I think you just have to invest more time, more money, more resource, more thought into those things. And yeah, we do keep our people, but I think we've got pretty good at sort of understanding leadership behaviors, not just management behaviors. And we're not perfect. Let me tell you, we wrestle with things every day. We make mistakes every day. We're reasonably good at calling them out and saying what went wrong there and what can we do to fix that, and listening to the team. I'll give you another example. I was going into the process quite recently about, let's update the business plan annually. Let's think about, is it quite the same as it should have been last year? Obviously not. And that always starts for me with do a little SWOT of the business. What's it feel like? And I would normally do that, Krish. But actually, we use All Gravy as a sort of engagement platform and a comms platform, which I said to Ollie, who heads it up, I said, let's ask 30 people in the business at all levels. So I've now got a SWOT that was built by 30 people. And I'll tell you what, it's a lot better than I would have done. It informs, and there's trends in there and things in there that I may not have seen or may have seen later. So it's about having a culture of listening and communicating persuasively. But there are the basics, and you in your business, you will know this better than anyone. The need states need to be there. We need to pay people correctly. We need to have the right perks and benefits, and we overinvest in that. If you're a waitress for us, you can get 20 weeks maternity pay. People, that's brilliant. Is it? Should it not be 40 weeks or maybe 50 weeks? It's better than some, and it's better than it was. So I think we've got to build all of those need states. They're really important. People who say money's not important have got too much money, frankly. It's really important to the people who work in our business, but also career development and making sure that everybody understands their role in a team is equally as important. And making it a good place to be. We have a lot of fun. We're serious and we do work hard, but we do have a lot of fun. We have a disproportionate amount of events. I've had many a conversation with our CFO, who's amazing. She's like, is that the right number? Well, the right number is the number that works. And I don't know what that is, but we're doing a lot more right than we're doing wrong. And I think you've got to create an environment where people are having fun, they're paid and rewarded fairly. And, the research has said it for decades, right? People leave businesses because their relationship with their line manager isn't right, or not being treated well. That's number one, really. And we do talk about that. We measure happiness on a weekly basis. We have engagement scores and pulse surveys all the time. But if anyone can do that, but what do you do with it?
Absolutely.
We take it on, we go back to the team and we say, this is what you said. And we're not doing well there. We need to improve. In that area, we're doing really well and we're going to double down on it. So no silver bullet. And I'm a creature of curiosity, really. I love going to events, talking to people like you and others in the industry and go, that is a great idea. We should definitely do that. Or maybe it's not relevant for us, but there is no silver bullet. And if there is, someone should please tell me what it is.
In terms of the coaching side of things that you just mentioned, I'm a massive fan of this, kind of like in terms of like individuals reaching out, going for coffees with people, all of that kind of stuff. At what stage of your career did you start having a coach, and have you had multiple? What's been your journey with that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I I was fortunate enough. I spent 9 years at M&B, which was a real school. I learned so many of the disciplines of running a business like we do today at M&B. And when I left, I was pretty like bitter about, here is so many things that could have been better. But I learned a hell of a lot, and I have an enormous amount of to thank for my time with some of the best leaders I've ever worked with. Kevin Todd's, Tony Hughes, Vanessa Hall's, David Singleton's. Really, really emotionally intelligent, demanding leaders. I think it started there. I think my desire to grow and be curious, it was always there. I think when I was at Oaxaca, I was lucky that Mark and Tommy and the team offered up specific coaching, and the coach that I still use today, actually, I met there. And so from a personal perspective, I value coaching. I think what I've also learned is you can't coach people, nor should you, who don't want to be coached. And within the team, we do a lot of work around, is the right thing for that person to be coached or to be mentored or to be told? It's actually, you need to learn these things. So I think every human being is different and every leader is different, but have that option available. I was talking to my ops director this morning about this, here's a couple of opportunities or options for the next steps in your career development. And some of them will seem more exciting than others, but some of them I would say will be less relevant to the success of that person in their role and their next role. So you've got to be quite honest about that too. But yeah, I've been lucky that I've worked with some teams, some people in those teams that have really inspired me and taught me a lot. And I'm a pretty good magpie at taking the best things. And, Thom and James in the early days and the board that supported us then and now have always been super supportive of protecting those things. And you can't underestimate that, because it's like a muscle. You've got to keep working it. You can't do it. We've just had a cohort of people who've finished a 2 years development program. It's like, great, what's next? Because it doesn't just stop, does it? We don't just stop. Oh, I did that thing in 2025. We've got to keep identifying what's going to help people make a better contribution to the team and be happier at work. And if you can do that and all the things we just talked about, I think you've probably got a fighting chance that they stay. And our job is to make sure they stay and perform well, because that's also important. Having tenured people is great, so long as they're adding value and they're not getting lazy, as in not feeling like they're part of something that can take the business to the next level or their team to the next level. But that's our job. That starts and ends with me. We've got to make sure that we are honest with people. You are performing, you're not performing, your behaviors aren't consistent with what we want. And you get that now and again. But mostly you're dealing with the 80%. You've got the super high achievers, you've got the bottom. If you take that out, actually, our job is that 80% is what are we doing as a business, an organization, if you will, to create a better environment for those people to succeed. And we can, we sell pieces. We're not putting babies back together, Chris. We can create an environment where people have a great deal of fun. And, I'm not a micromanager. I know what I know, and there are things that frustrate me. And if people say they're going to do something and they don't do it, that doesn't sit well with me. But ultimately, I don't want to watch people's diaries. I don't want people clocking in and out. I want them to deliver. I want them to feel happy and supported in the delivery of it. But, sometimes people can, abuse that. And that's my leadership lesson, is not everyone's the same. And some people will need to be micromanaged. Some people will absolutely not. And that is something which I spend my days wrestling with.
And I mean, it leads me on to the next question, which is like, and we've been very fortunate through running this interview series that we've managed to speak to some industry titans who are incredible individuals. Ian Edwards, Robin Rowland, Darryl Connell from Biba, and without prompt in each one of their sessions, not crossing over sessions and all of that kind of stuff, they cited Pizza Pilgrims and you personally as being kind of like the template for how to grow and scale a business, how to succession plan, how to kind of like put all of that together. I know that is a true fanboy moment, but it's the absolute truth. Like it's kind of the template. And I think a lot of people will watch this interview thinking like, what's the secret sauce? How did that kind of work? How did all of this kind of like come together? What was the planning? Was this always kind of like in the scale? But did it from an external perspective, it looks seamless. But I mean, under the bonnet, kind of like in reality, what challenges did you come up against?
Oh, thank you. What a question. definitely not seamless. No, the people you've spoken about are people who have, been demanding, but equally understood the value and the purpose of Pizza Pilgrims. So, I remember our old chairman, he and I never really fell out, but we had one moment about 4 or 5 years ago where we were talking about what head office would look like the year after. And we had a pretty strong disagreement about what that level of resource would be. And there were two things. One, he was wrong. And two, I was wrong. And I failed to articulate why I felt that level of resource was needed for the following 12 months ahead of the meeting. That was my fault. And I've learned from that ever since that day. And actually, we arrived at a place after a couple of hours where we both understood it wasn't, it was the timing of how we were going to bring those people in. But what I'm really trying to say here is the secret is making sure if you lead or part of a leadership team in a hospitality business, you probably know what really makes you tick. And if you don't, find out quickly, because those things you've got to protect in stone forever, and we try and do that every year just to make sure we're right in the right place. And we talk about it every quarter and we try and protect those things. And, if you're trying to make the best pizza in the world, that means you've got to use the best ingredients. So that means if one little supply chain decision could start chipping away at that, if you try to create the best environment for hospitality talent to work and grow, and you start saying, oh, that doesn't matter, make them do a little bit more. Actually, we'll do one-to-one twice a year. All those things will start to chip away. So I don't think there is a secret sauce, but I think it's genuinely about understanding what makes you different. What is your unique selling points, if you will? And I don't just mean we sell a pizza for £12 at all. I mean, what defines you as a leadership team? Can you say in your leadership team, in any of the businesses, the people that are listening, what is it you stand for? And, if it's a marketing team or an operations team, they should have their own purpose within the broader team, organization, brand, and they should live and die by that. And I think if you can create that identity for the brand and the business, and within that create team identities, look, nobody, you could work in the biggest, most successful business on the planet, but you're working for the person you work for, and you've got to be proud of where you're working and what you're delivering. Those things have to happen. So when investors talk about the things that you wonderfully articulated, I think actually it's more than just, the barking dog. Sorry, it's more than me just being the CEO of a business or having two wonderful founders. I think what we've really built is an environment where we deliver commercially. So there's no doubt some of the names you raised, if we were missing budget by £1 million profit every year, I guess the opinion would be somewhat less. So you've got to walk and chew gum, right? And we have challenges every day, every week, every month, and we have to address them. So maybe it's about being pragmatic about how you see those challenges. Which ones are the ones that you take on first? Which are the ones you take second? Because there's no doubt, there's no hospitality business, surely, without a problem, without an opportunity, without a difficulty. And quite frankly, there's probably more than now than ever before. But yeah, taking it head on and saying, look, this is a problem, we're going to fix it. Or this is an opportunity, we're going to exploit it. And creating time and tools for people to go and get that done, because we were guilty of it. We came out the back of COVID and we had Slice and we had Pizza in the Post, which had been incredibly successful in COVID. What we had to do was say, look, Pizza Pilgrims has reopened and it's going really well. We need to stop spending so much time over there and put the time back there. And, I don't know how many books you read that say, spend your time where you need to spend it. It's easier said than done, because there's multiple stakeholders pulling in multiple areas. And my job is to make sure we're pointing the nose of all that time and resource in the right direction so that we've got a business that's better in 5 years than it is today. But I love that. I mean, it's such a beautiful opportunity and challenge to be in my position where you've got 650 talented people with a wonderful product and supportive investors. It could be a lot worse, but we do have to walk and chew gum. Like I say, you can't, I'm obsessive about the delivery of the basics. Every single pizzeria was a 5-star EHO for a reason, because 6 years ago, when we had a couple on a 4-star, we educated through it again. Every single salaried position in our business is level 3 trained, and we have an academy that teaches them that. So you've got to go back to those basics again, like we said earlier, Chris, because then you end up in a board meeting where you're talking about the things you want to talk about. You're not talking about a crisis or a disaster or a problem. And you can then focus on how do we successfully grow the team and the business and the P&L. That's probably not a concise answer because I don't have a silver bullet. I think if I was to go in as a leader into another organization or business or brand tomorrow, I'd probably do it differently. I would focus on people. I would focus on quality. I would obsess about the basics. But I would also do a lot of listening about what's going to make that business tick because they're different. They operate in different places with different styles and different price points. And, when I was running pubs in M&B versus brilliant Mexican street food versus Pizza Pilgrims, they are different. We're all taking pounds and pence off people to eat in a restaurant, but they're quite different. And that is the biggest challenge of our industry. We are incredibly different and diverse, aren't we?
Absolutely. So a lot of people talk about leadership style, and one thing we mentioned kind of like before we started recording was about founder style. And, two examples that I'd kind of given, one of them is to do with Pizza in the Post, because we did an event with you guys where we did, I think we had about 100, I think it was 80 or 100 kind of like contacts that were on a Zoom call making Pizza in the Post at home. And Thom actually came on at the start of the call and did the introduction for us. And I mean, which founder would do that for a recruitment agency? Absolutely incredible. But my first kind of like experience of kind of meeting both of them was at a conference that was probably about 8 or 9 years ago. And there was another brand that was there that did the massive kind of like, we're going to open 200 sites, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and we're rock stars and all of that kind of stuff. And I remember, I think it was James came on, and he just talked for about 15 minutes about how they developed their own limoncello and spoke a lot about kind of like, their sites and their people and the product quality and how they loved everything. And the thing which kind of like, I don't think that they won that day, if that makes any sense, because kind of like, the guys that were opening 200 people, literally every private equity company, recruitment consultant, supplier, kind of like running over to them, kind of saying blah, 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 blah. But they just held their integrity. They did it so well. And that comment that you made about kind of like, the 18-year-old wanting to go in is such a, it's such a good metaphor for that kind of 100%. So in terms of the culture that they not drive through the business, but they influence through the business, can you just tell us a bit about how they do that and how that changes the ethos of the company?
Look, I mean, I've been lucky now. I've worked with Mark and Thomasina, who were exceptional, and for 5 years at Worker, and I've spent the last 8 years here in Thom and James, a different class. And I think the number one thing that always comes to mind when people ask me this question is how humble they are. Thom was top of his class at Oxford. James is incredibly smart, but they are very humble. They're emotionally intelligent at a level few people are. And they understand who we are as a business, what we want to be as a business. So I think what defines them is their ability to stay humble in a business taking £1 million a week, and I think actually what makes them different even to other founders, their style is very humble, very curious, very challenging, of course, but they're very, they know what they don't know. And that, there are some founders out there who are maniacal, completely maniacal. And the annoying thing is they're probably right, but you've got to bring people on a journey with you. You cannot grow businesses beyond half a dozen sites on your own. You just can't. And we all know that, but some founders will believe they can, and they will try, and they will probably burn themselves out. Thom and James, I think, knew early on areas that they would need to have help and support. And that might have started with our last chairman, investment group, when I came in as an operations director. And I could give you 20 more examples, but understanding the things that you don't know in order to shape the decisions you'll make is an absolute superpower of them as founders. And knowing now, I mean, we had a facilitated day in December with Andrea Wareham, who was on our board. She's exceptional, to sort of really how do we, me and Sophie, my CFO, and I, and Thom and James work together moving forward in this new world to get the best out of each person and make sure we're not making the same decisions 3 times or over communicating. But that's what we do. We sit down every 6 months and we talk about that. What's working, what's not working. We're incredibly, I guess it could be a fear of failure. It could be lack of confidence. I don't think it is. I think it's actually pretty confident to say, we don't know if this will work next year the way it worked last year. So let's talk about it. And that's got to start with who we are, how we work, how we interact, the way we're going to make decisions. And then the decisions. I think you can get wrapped up in the decision. We're going to do this thing. Great. How are you going to get there? Who's going to do that? How are you going to bring them on a journey with you? But I think to me, Thom and James, they haven't changed a bit in 8 years. I mean, they just haven't. They are the same people. Same. Thom is still the same scruffy sod he was 8 years ago, but still the smartest in his class. And he can talk about learning and development as enthusiastically as he can have a conversation with a landlord about a rent review. That is rare. And he cares enormously about all of it. And James is one of the most creative human beings that I've ever met, whether it's marketing, restaurant design, the menu. What we look from James now is he doesn't need to do those things. We have designers, marketing teams, etc. But James is our creative director, and don't doubt it. Would the business be worse without him? Yeah. But is he needed to do the things he did 8 years ago? Absolutely not. So we're trying to do that whole, what's the quarterback spot for each person to get the best out of them. And that's not just founders, that's everyone in the team. But that's kind of, for me, what defines them. They're humble, they know what they don't know, they're honest, they care enormously about people. I mean, enormously. We've had meetings about decisions that really didn't need to be taken, but it's because they care so much. And my superpower is I like working with people like that, and it's not simple, it's not the same every day, and it can be frustrating. And we've had people come and go from our team at all levels who don't work well in that environment, but that's who we are, and we ain't going to change. We value founders, we value what they bring, they value what I bring and Sophie brings, and our ops director Thom and other people in the team. But together, somehow the alchemy of that works, and we've just got to make sure that we protect that at all costs. And the effect on team members, if a founder sends them a message, if a founder taps them on the shoulder and says well done, if a founder invites them for breakfast, that makes a real difference to those people, because they're the founders. They don't see themselves like that. But of course, if you're a waiter in Edinburgh and one of the founders wants to sit down and have a coffee with you, they think that's special, and it is.
Absolutely.
So,
It's amazing to still have that. Incredible. Now, one of the things I think is really unfortunate about the current economic situation and all of that side of things is that, and this is something that we see kind of like being an international company, is that if you're in America and your business fails, suddenly you almost wear it like a badge of honor in terms of like, I had this business that went under, something didn't go wrong,
yeah,
blah, 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 blah. Because we're British and because like we self-deprecate kind of so badly, people take failure in this country kind of like extremely personally.
yeah,
On that kind of side of things. And yes, I know that every day at Pizza Pilgrims is a sunny day and it's all fantastic and it's amazing all the time and all of that kind of stuff. Can your
maybe
laughter.
not.
But but it's important that even kind of like people watching this who maybe haven't had the best run of luck, who maybe have been working for businesses that have been struggling,
Yeah,
who maybe are taking a lot of that business, kind of like do hear a little bit about kind of like the fact that yes, maybe I am Gavin, and yes, maybe I am running the most fantastic pizza company in the UK and all of that side of things. But also, this is something that I failed at, and this is what I kind of learned from it. Have you got any examples like that that you may be able to share?
God, how long have you got? Failure. Yeah. I suppose I do have an innate fear of failure, to be honest. I was talking to someone about this last week. I do. It drives me, actually. And I don't know where that comes from. My dad was in the military. My parents didn't have money. I don't know, a psychologist would spend a long time and then probably say, you need to go away now. But actually, I don't fear failure in as much as if the business fails because we've got a poorly delivered product, that's failure that I would struggle to recover from. If it's failure because we've made a decision with the right intent, with the right data, with the right thinking, and it didn't work, I think you've just got to learn quick. I think you've got to embrace it. And, to deflect and reflect a little bit, when I see people in my team and people in the wider team who do something that doesn't work, the worst thing you can do as a leader is smack them over the head, because they'll never do it again. They'll never look to take any risks. And I know there's books written about this. We're not a dot-com business. We take calculated risks and we take time to think about those decisions. But, we were the first people to get, a food at home product in the UK. It was 24 hours after Boris locked us down. We've developed slicing. We're pretty good at doing that and taking risks. And things, things that have failed. We've only had one location that's ever failed. We try to learn hard from that, right? As much as you could just deal with it, right? Sell it, move on. But you also have to go, well, what happened before? Like, what decisions did we take? What data did we look at that we could make those same decisions again and therefore fail again? And I think also people, your team are looking at you, right? The way you behave is the way people will think you lead, right? So again, someone wise said to me once that character is what you see when no one's looking, and it's, to me, it's like when the chips are down, how do people, everyone's brilliant in December, right? Sales are great. But you see character and leaders in January. You don't need, managers, you need leaders. And I think it's about the mini failures, really. I don't want to talk in absolutes. I mean, we all read in the press businesses that are posting losses and people who are moving jobs. I think that they can get quite personal, and I'm sure there's important things driving that. Aside from that, I think in every business, every day, there's mistakes made. But it's about, why was it made? Have we made 10 of them and we're not learning from it? So I think we're pretty good at going, that didn't work. Shit, let's get it fixed. And thankfully, we haven't made many real faux pas, and we try so hard not to. But inevitably, as you get bigger and you make more decisions and you grow, you will open yourself up to the risk of that. The biggest thing we can fail at is letting our team down. I can tell you that for a fact, because we can't deliver anything without these people, and that's why we just try and listen. Sometimes, and I think it's really important to go, the answer is no. You've said that thing, the answer is no. I remember chatting to one of the managing partners, or people may refer to as ops managers or area managers, but we have managing partners. And I was talking to one of the area meetings, and I said, I know how much pressure you get on labour and cost of goods, etc. I said, but I want you to know it comes from the very top. But if it ever is at a point where you feel like you can't deliver your experience, you need to talk to us. And we've had multiple examples of that. Clive, who looks after out of London for us, came to us when we were rebudgeting and said, I need 1.5% more labour in Edinburgh. And he got it. He articulated it well. And he said, here's why. Here's some comparables. Interestingly, if we just go in and say it's an ops issue to deal with labour, or it's a finance issue to deal with reporting, or it's a marketing issue to deal with bums on seats, that's nonsense. It's a collective issue always. There's going to be someone accountable to make the decision. I get that. But if we can make decisions together, we fail together, we succeed together. And that's the one thing I really would observe. If there's a decision made, it didn't work, and there's failure, do people then start to look and point? That's a really dangerous culture, because the trust will be gone pretty much overnight. And we're not in that position. And I try my best and fail at that sometimes, to be that kind of leader, to be that kind of person to my team. But it's hard, Chris, because we haven't just got founders to satisfy, or 650 people, or 70,000 pizzas a week. We've got investors. We do need to deliver commercially and build a brilliant brand and be a B Corp. I often refer to it with Thom about, we're trying to build Disney on a Wetherspoons budget. You can't do both, can you? And that's no disrespect to Wetherspoons at all. They're a brilliant, brilliant business. But you get my point. And I think what we've got to do is keep staying true to the core purpose of the business. Make sure the business plan is aligned, and make sure the business plan is realistic, and go and get it done. Have some fun. And, when we do fail, get up quickly. If you fall over, get up really quickly, brush yourself down and get on with it. And that's what, in my experience, the best leaders have done. Just don't make really big ones and then defend them forever. If you've made a mistake, just say I've made a mistake.
Absolutely. Now, the final question that I wanted to come on to, because I think it's something which you guys shout about within your organization, which I don't think lots of other organizations do, but it's about your supplier relationships. Because I think they've always been a big priority. I actually went to an evening down at Canary Wharf. This was a while back, and it was one of your I think he sells product. I don't want to get it wrong by mentioning, but he's Italian, very Italian, and he sells a product. And he was basically waxing lyrical about how he started, and he had a small operation, and now it's grown, and it's just a really incredible thing. But that always stuck in my mind of never been to an event where one of your suppliers was there and was talking about how this phenomenal business had also affected
Yeah.
kind of like, his whole business as well. So it'd be great to understand a bit about your approach to that.
I think it starts with partnership, Chris. People can use that word. And I'm throughout the business, that's how I lead, I operate, I talk about, and I very much expect, ask that everybody in the business behaves the same way. So whether or not it's someone coming to fix an oven, that's a partner, that's a contractor, someone emptying your bins or cleaning your drains, make them a cup of coffee, make eye contact with them, say hello, how's your day been? With partners, it's the same. So yes, they are a supply chain output, procurement output. We have to get the right cost of goods. Absolutely, we do. But they're partners of ours. And what we want to make sure is that they make money, that we're fair to them, that they're fair to us, and that we communicate well. And then what you're probably going to get is the best innovation. We developed the vegan Nduja with Bella Zoo. He's a brilliant partner, and we used to do monthly innovation days, and that was one of the outputs. We've got multiple examples of that. And the Limoncello supplier actually in Amalfi, he he's the most wonderful guy. I mean, if you've never eaten a lemon on an Amalfi Grove in Italy, which I hadn't until a few years ago, you can eat them like apples. But the passion and the enthusiasm you get from really those people who make the product, the ingredient, the commodity, whether it's the Alauri family who make our wine in Abruzzo in Italy, or Latteria Sorrentina who make the cheese for our pizza, Antimo Caputo their family's been making flour for pizza for 120 years. What you're getting there, and this is what started Pizza Pilgrims, was this pilgrimage to the best ingredients to make the best pizza. And I think today it's the same. Go to Germany, it's a pilgrimage into Germany. We've got to make sure that we're partnering with the right people. And my fondest example, about 4 years ago, through our relationship with Y Food, I met at like a business speed dating event a guy called Chris Davies. He's got a business called Harvest London, and he was making like lemon aniseed microcress for Gordon Ramsay. And I said to him, can you grow me 2 tons of basil here? He went, no. I said, cool. I said, do you make any money, Chris? He went, no. I said, this hasn't started well, has it? Anyway, we signed a letter of intent, and 18 months later, and to this day, all of our basil comes from a vertical farm in South London, delivered on e-bikes. We buy basil now at a much better commercial rate than the industry, whereas before it was higher. We have our own strain of basil. We tried 14 different varietals of basil. This particular is the best basil to go with the pizza. It doesn't burn. There's not too much oil in the basil. So what you do with partners is you find better solutions. And that Harvest London is, to me, the best example of it, where you can really make something uniquely different and better. We also save, by the way, nearly 500,000 food miles a year, because everybody else in the industry buys basil from one of 3 countries based on the season, and they have to bring it in sometimes by air freight, which is why it's expensive. But we were paying £6 a kilo more than market for 3 years. So you've got to make some decisions whether or not this is important to you. And we make pizza. There are 3 or 4 ingredients in pizza that you cannot compromise, in my view. Some businesses do. We're not going to do that. So if you can really double down on that, and I do mean it's not just the food and drinks partners, it's absolutely those people. But, if you're a good friend and a partner to people, they're going to be the same to you. So when the chips are down, you need something, they'll probably answer the phone. And that was my point about when the oven's broken. You treat, a delivery rider, they're miserable sods in helmets, are they? Or are they just trying to earn some money for their family? Give them an espresso. We give the delivery riders the same company benefits that our team get, and some of them want it, some of them don't. But be a good partner to them, and that's what we expect from partners as well. We don't want poor communication or bad service delivery, and rarely do we get it. But it's that fair and honest transaction. That's the nucleus of it, really, Chris. Again, maybe it's easier for smaller businesses that started with 2 founders driving an Ape through Italy. I get it. But, we're not now. We're a big restaurant business. We employ a lot of people. And I think partnership's never been more important. And I think as we grow, it will become even more important. So, yeah, I guess that's my assessment on that.
Excellent. Gavin, I really enjoyed the whole session. Thank you so much. I did slightly lie at the start of this because I thought we were going to be a little bit more than 20 minutes. So it's rounded off to an hour. Hopefully everybody kind of like enjoyed the content, but I thought that was absolutely phenomenal. Thank you very much for sharing all your insights and your career journey and everything about the business with us. I really enjoyed that.
Oh, thank you very much. I feel very privileged that anybody would want to know my view on the world. But look, I'm just a chef from the north who's worked his way through hospitality, and I really love the hospitality industry, and I think it can make a difference to people's lives. And if there's one or two things that people can take away from my conversation, then wonderful, because I've taken a lot away from the others. I've listened to most of them, Chris.
Thanks, Gav. I appreciate it. Thanks, Sam.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.